Hi everyone, Sarah here from Sarah Hombre Creates, my little space to have some fun and do some experimental creative things. So I thought today I would show you this. This is like a little scrapbook, inspirations book, and I actually found this in the studio the other day. It wasn't lost, but I was looking for something else and I came across it, and I haven't looked at it for a long time, and I got it out and I thought, oh, that might be really interesting to show you as a way to collect your ideas and store your inspiration for a resource, as I have a resource for a project. So I'm going to show you through this book. So I made this about 20 years ago. I remember where I was when I made it, and it's had a few reincarnations. It didn't start like this, and it's not a finished thing by any means. It's also pre-Royal School of Needlework, so before I did any of my embroidery training, so it's very different from anything else that I will have done, but it did lead on to some other projects. I am going to show you those in the video. And one of the ones that I want to show you is the cover from my silk shading book that I wrote for the Royal School of Needlework. I'm going to show you this piece here, and we'll have a look at that and how I made that. So let's switcheroo the camera and we'll have a little peek inside. Okay, so it's quite large, it's the size of my hands. It's sort of twice letter format really. It did start life as a book, and I just stuck some images in a book, and then that book fell apart, and then it got to this. I think there was another stage in between, but I can't remember that, and I can't really remember what the reason for doing this was. It was pre-Royal School of Needlework, so don't expect anything beautiful and fine in here. It's really a way of collecting my ideas and having a little bit of a play. Having a play is important, because you don't learn new things and you don't get to experiment if you're always worried about doing a finished, completed project. Then there's no room for experimentation in there and having a little bit of fun and seeing what your materials will do. So this is really what this is, collection of ideas and little experiments and trials and things that I've found along the way, and I put them all together in this book. So as you can see, the theme is the sea. I hope you can see that. It's quite large and a bit unwieldy, so I'm going to turn it around and try and show you everything that's in here and just talk through what I've done and what I've found, and hopefully it might inspire you to have a go. So the first thing I need to do is turn it around. Okay, so I started, if I just lift that out of the way, just by cutting things out of magazines. So you can see my underwater theme here. We've got some fish, we've got some coral, we've got some sharks up here, some weird sea creatures, and I've just cut them out and literally collaged them. This is quite interesting because I reckon this book is about 20 years old now, and I do quite a bit of collage now, so it's quite fun to sort of see an early attempt at it. It wasn't really to make a collage, it was to create this underwater sea world here, and then I've made this little piece of textile, I suppose you would call it, over the top. And this is a couple of pieces of netting, and I used a machine, so I do remember at this point in time using a bit of machine embroidery. I'm not a fan now, I like hand embroidery, but it made a really nice effect, and I just literally stitched around in circles on this, and I've trapped in these little sayings and little words about the sea. These are actually printed on paper. So I've trapped the paper between the layers of net, and I've just stitched through it all, and you get a little bit of that collage sea coming through from the background. So even this is just an experiment, it actually makes quite a nice piece. I think there's a lot of potential in that. I really like the edges of this, where I've just sewn the paper in here, and you could keep decorating this, you could do some more stitching on it, and then I've just made that, just attached it at the top and made it a freestanding piece. So just some experimentation with some different ideas. I'm going to keep it this way because I'm just come back to that bit in a minute and that bit in a minute. So here are some sayings that I've taken about the sea. So often words can inspire something as well. This is a poem. Actually it's not a poem, it's a hymn. Eternal Father, strong to save, and it's all about seafarers, and it's what they sing when they lose seafarers at sea. So hear us when we cry to thee for those in peril on the sea. This one is from that as well. O Holy Spirit, who didst brood upon the waters dark and rude. Really very moving, a beautiful hymn actually, and obviously taken those from there. This is a little bit of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, 1828. And this is a very, very, very long poem if you've ever read this, but little bits of this I really liked. So I've just written those out by hand and put some little fishes and then some words that apply to the sea: ferocious, treacherous, tumultuous. So quite dark and broody and moody things to describe the sea. So words can often come into it, and I just cut those out and pasted them in, and those might help remind me of some feelings about the sea. This is a little bit of silk sort of handkerchief, I think, really, that I've done some silk painting on. So which way is it? Yeah, it is that way up. So you can buy this thing called gutter, and you paint it on and it stops the silk paint seeping into that bit, so you can draw outlines around things. Basically, it's a little bit creased, it's been in here a while. So I've drawn the outline of the fish, and then I've just dropped in some silk paints, and they just stop at the edge of this line here. And then this is made, I think, probably by dropping salt into the silk paint before it's dry, and that makes this really interesting kind of watery effect. So just having this play again with some materials and just seeing what I can create with it. I don't know if I had a plan for that to be something. It still could be, but that just sits in there. And then these, just some pictures I've got out of magazines and books. So here's some designs from the Ming Dynasty of waves. Turn it back round. Really stylised waves. And if you're doing embroidery, which I do, obviously you can see how these are immediately translatable into some pattern, so something that you could actually stitch. And some pictures, so varying different kind of seas here. So I've got the sea in its many guises, so ferocious here, inviting, calm here, and what vivid, burning and on fire here. So very different views of what the sea is like, depending on what you want to say about it. Quite now I'd like to be in this place, I think. And then I just sort of didn't worry too much about pages. I've made this out of quite thick card. This turquoise is quite thick card, but then I've just stuck these in. They're actually falling out now after all this time, but just stuck in extra leaves. That one's stuck on this. There's some more wave designs. So don't worry if you don't put enough leaves in, you can just add a few more. So we're getting a bit more experimental here. Switch it round again. So again, another two-layered one here. So I've got some little samples underneath here. We've got some images of ships and of some water. And then I've had a little play again with machine embroidery on some felt here and just some calico, and just played with some swirling designs here. This one is an interesting one. You put the thicker thread in the bobbin and you kind of get this couched effect, which is actually really nice and textural, makes a really nice foaming sea sort of effect. Done the same here with some waves, so the thicker thread is on top and the finer thread is holding it down. And this is an interesting piece. This is on a piece of calico that's been painted. You can see the paint on it there and the stitches on the back. And then again, just done a sort of vermicelli type stitching just round and round and some spirals and stuff. And it's actually got some silk fibres in here, and just stitched right over the silk fibres. It's got a bit flattened, but that gives it a really nice, interesting texture. And it's fun to see this again because my embroidery is very different now to this, and it's quite fun to see this and to see how experimental I did actually get. And then this piece goes on the top. So this is stitched on paper. This has been painted as well. I think it might have been printed. This comes in again later, this motif, which is a print block. And I printed it and added some paint on it and then stitched through the paper, added in some extra things. There's a ship here. Another one over here and down here. I've written some thing on there. What does that say? Water pressure at 35,000 foot is 8.5 tonnes per square inch. Interesting fact there. Don't know what that means really. And these are interesting. Look, a little bit of netting, and I hope you can see that actually says foaming on it. Embroidered some words on it, so foaming there. And then there's a bit more netting here with some more stitching over it. I can feel the netting, that's caught underneath the netting. And then there's this little one here, which is a little ship, a little tall ship with its sails, that has been stitched onto the netting and machine embroidered again onto the netting and painted as well, and that's over that tall ship there. So some really interesting layers going on. I really actually quite like that one. So some more just experiments with water, some more netting here, and I think this is just literally woven through the netting There's no stitching or anything, and that just woven some threads through, and that makes quite an interesting layer to something. That little bit of sparkle in there. So just playing with some water ideas here. This is just knitting wool, and it's kind of stuck together in a piece of fabric. I don't know how I stuck this together. It's quite delicate, but feels a little bit stiff. Some sort of glue in that. I don't know how I've done that, but really quite interesting effects. Again, you can put that on some calico and do some stitching through that. Another one here. Obviously had quite a lot of fun doing this book. So more netting and some more machine embroidery, layered some other fabrics in there, some sparkly stuff, got some holes in it. I don't know if I ripped those before or after, not sure. Some more netting, some more blue kind of fabrics. Really interesting on both sides actually. That makes a really nice kind of textured watery see-through piece. This is a little bit of painted paper, makes a nice background. So this is just watercolour, and then if you just get some cling film or some food wrap, and then you scrunch it up and you put that on while the paint is wet, then you wait till the paint to dry and you peel it off, and it gives you these sort of bubble shapes, which is really interesting. Could definitely do more with that. So more fabric experiments here. I love this one. It's fastened in to the book, but this is what looks like a bit of muslin, very fine loosely woven fabric here, and I've just distressed it, basically pulled lots of the fibres out, made some holes in it and pulled them together and just had to fiddle with it. It actually feels beautiful. It's so soft, but look at the texture of that, really amazing. And then just done some little scrunching up, some sort of smocking type techniques here and here as well. Just having fun with the fabric. I've layered some different ones here, cut into quite crude wave shapes, but these things don't have to be perfect. You can see how I've just had a play with it. I'm not worried I've just glued them down. You can see the glue there, but it's just to get some ideas going and to see what works. And you might think, oh, that's a really good start to something. I could make these lays and I could stitch them down properly, and but just some ways of trying some stuff out. And then a little image under there that you can see through that really interesting watery effect. What I love about this is all the layers to it. It's really tactile thing. So let's peel back some of the layers. Let's see what's underneath first and work our way to the top. Look at all the pages in it. Love it. So some actual drawing. You can do some actual drawing. That's really nice to do. Some shell shapes. Gosh, that's not easy to say. And some of the patterns that are on the shells as well. Just pattern on its own here and here, just to sort of look at how you might generate some stitches. You can look at these and think, oh, I know what stitch I could use for those. Just a page of interesting shell shapes. Some prints here. Let's move this over. So this is done probably with the edge of something, maybe an edge of a cardboard or something, and just gone round and round to make this spiral shell. This one as well. This one is on a little bit of tissue paper. This has been like a rubbing from an actual shell. So just get a crayon and a bit of tissue and you get the texture of the shell on the tissue paper. So this is some dribble drawing based on a shell studies. So I've just got paint and just dribbled it. This is really crusty. It just feels wonderful. And you can just see where the colours of the paint have run together here and got these shell shapes, and these quite nice negative shapes. So these spaces in between the colours are called negative shapes, and they can be as interesting as the colours. And especially when you're doing embroidery, think about the spaces in between your elements as well, because that will make all the difference. So painting with some shell shapes, some more squiggles and squirrels. Another drawing here. This is a nice page. Little study of a shell here. These are the colours that were in the shell as well. So little sort of swatches of colours. This is really great if you wanted to stitch this later. You've got your colour palette all ready for you there. Some details of what it looks like, some of the textures in it. Really lovely little study that. And then this one as well. So another shell here. This is a beautiful little drawing actually, really nice little study, one of those round, oh here it is, look, one of those round ones, like a sea urchin or something, and done a little study of what it actually looks like, an image of what it looks like, broken it down into the patterns, broken it down into the colours, and then had a little play with some ideas of the pattern from the shell. So here's a side view of it, but it had these definite circles on it and you can see how I've turned that into a little bead pattern, possible bead design, which I think is great if you've got the right colours on this fabric. It's beautiful. And just broken it into an even plainer design here, so these lines, these radiating lines out, and the little beads in between, just to make some patterns. So really nice little study sheet there, right from the original shell design. And I've got a little bit that I've painted on silk there, and I've used that gutter again to mark the spots so that the paint doesn't soak into those, and you can just see that design on that little bit of silk paper. Image found in a magazine, really interesting, but the spots are coming back in, which is quite nice to tie up these ideas. You start to see other things when you look at something very closely, especially when you draw it. You see things that you don't just see in a photograph. The photograph sort of does the looking and you don't, but if you actually draw it, you have to look at these things and see what's actually in them. So it is worth doing a drawing. And then I've got some more rubbings here of shells, this tissue paper, and then a little print. So this is a calico fabric that's been washed in sort of sunset-y colours, really, yellow and pinks, and then this stamp, which I think I made, I don't know if I made it or bought it, like a foam stamp, and I've just stamped some shell shapes into this fabric. It makes a really nice pattern, really nice repeating pattern, that. So a bit more of the same over here, another print here, so red and orange and yellow background, printed some red squares on, printed the gold on top. You can see how easily you can get from a shell to a pattern to a print to another print just by having this little play process, and you can get some really ideas. It gets more abstract each time you do something different to it. But serviette with some shells on. So some more study pages here. So another shell design, quite a loose watercolour one here. Writing some ideas down here. I like the layers of this shell. It kind of like had one layer on top of another. There's a little bit of it here. Look, try to emulate the layers with some bits of fabric. Just cut them out and stuck them on top of each other. Again, some machine embroidery ideas, French knots, couching. So if you've got some knowledge of some stitches, you can start to think about how they might come into it. So back to this idea of the layers, different fabrics, really beautiful shell colours here, some pale peaches and lavender, purpley colours and creams and beiges, and really nice different layers, and they're quite a fine fabric there. That's a lovely fabric. Some net again, some silks in here. So just finding some fabrics now that will begin to represent these things that I've been studying. Another shell study here, nice little drawing from both sides. You can see the layers in it here, simplified down into these layers. Ticked some colours I like and crossed some colours I don't like. So here's another palette that I've just, these colours good, I've put here, exclamation mark. Different weights of materials, lighter materials. So all my ideas I've written down, because once you've had these ideas, there's too many to keep in your head, so write them down. And you've got this record of all these ideas. You may never look them at ever again, but that doesn't matter. So there's back to that other one we looked at, and a little print of it. What a beautiful print that makes. Really nice fabric print that one would make, that shell. Here's some more shell ideas I've got here. So this is the layered one we've looked at. Another little drawing of a nautilus shell. Another rubbing here in different colours. This was from a bit of fabric. Here, printed on a bit of fabric. These are done on silk, so a bit more silk painting, some printing here. And I've actually made this one out of felt. This has got potential, definitely. And I've just quite crudely cut out some shapes and just laid them up. But can you imagine if you did that all carefully and beautifully, and you could add some stitching to it, and you could add some gold and some beads and really make this beautiful encrusted shell. So quite inspired by this. It's lovely to look through it again. Okay, so we are doing some coral now. We kind of got it in a kind of an organised kind of way, and this is knitting wool that just made beautiful coral shapes. Just stuck them in there. Some thread samples, so a really lovely coral picture here. A little knot of these threads. I mean, how much do that, like that, do they look? You know, brilliant. How can you use your threads in your materials to represent something? Kept a little record of the colours here. Some actual ones that I've stitched. They're 3-dimensional. I've flattened a bit because they've been in there a while, but they all stand up and they all open up into a tube. So that was really interesting idea. This one I've tried to represent some coral. This is just silk. I've just stripped and cut into strips and frayed along the edges and just stuck it into a rough coral shape, but the colours are fabulous for this. This is some actual seaweedy stuff, corally stuff. Don't know where it came from. It's dry and it's falling apart. A little bit more experiments with some fabric here. This is an early attempt at some felt making. It's pretty bad because it's not even felt. I don't know what that is. But you can see the start of something. You can see the layers in it, you can see the background bringing the coral in on top. You could stitch things into it, you could do beautiful fish on top of it. You know, it's all really wonderful experimentation and playful fun. Oh look, I've even beaded a bit of coral there. Spent some time on this, so that was kind of, you know, you can mix all sorts of materials together as well. This is really good fun to play with. Just switcheroo it again. So a painted background, getting light towards the middle. If you ever been underwater or diving or snorkeling, you'll know that this bright light from above, and the further down you go it gets darker and darker. So really nice way to play with the background. I've got some fir tree, but how much like a coral does that look? And it's all stuck in these silk fibres. Bit of knitting wool, bit more knitting wool here. Just stuck them on, starting to create this sort of scene here. So just some images that I've stuck in. Haven't done too much with these ones. A little painting there of some coral and another little drawing there. Good idea to write down what it is. Social feather duster, that says. So if you did want to think, what was that? I want to find it again. You know what to look for. A little bit of Escher fish, who made these amazing patterns that interlocked with each other and repeated each other. And it's just the same image repeated. This is a piece of embroidery by the look of it, just a black and white copy. Didn't write down what it was. Should have done that. Make sure you know where you're getting your inspiration from. What's this one about? See stories. So magazine article, magazine for artists, A&N magazine. All about somebody who did a range of artwork, all about the sea. And I do actually remember this ship in a cup. And I did a printmaking course, and I did storm in a teacup, and I drew a cup with a storm in it and a boat in it. So I have been inspired by the sea quite a lot. Oh, look at that beautiful image of that boat in the water. Really stunning. Now that was the image that I used. I will try and find a copy of that print and put it up on the screen at this point so you can see that. And I think this was the ship that I used for my inspiration for the teacup. It's rather excellent, and I wouldn't want to be on that ship. Got some fish going on here, so just got to the point where I'm sticking a lot of stuff in here. This is some sort of print. Don't know what that's from. It says drink like a fish on the back. Don't drink like a fish, folks, unless it's good for you. But really interesting see-through things going on there. Some more printmaking here. I did make this one. This is a little bit of sort of styrofoam, and you just carve out the styrofoam, and then where you've carved it out, that bit doesn't pick up the ink, and then that bit comes out white. So I've just made that little block there. inked up the block and just printed it lots of times and made a really interesting tile of that. Some more fish inspiration. Look at this silk piece to this. How brilliant is that? So again, just a bit of silk fabric painted with silk paints, the dots with the resist again so the paint doesn't soak in, and just by putting on this colour background it's given me the dots colour of the fish. So I think that bit is inspired. Don't know what to do with it, but really interesting. Nothing under that one. Seahorse. Now this isn't my design, but I did stitch this onto a scarf many years ago for my mum. I shall ask her if she's still got it and put a picture up of that if I have. So I don't again know where that design came from, but it wasn't mine, so you should always note where you get these things from. A piece of paper out of a magazine with some water on it saying relax. This is some fish identification thing. Came from somewhere, was stuck in once. Oh wow, look at that image. Just about see that boat there. That's a beautiful image. The colours are really, I think, what gets me. These colours that are coming through, really stunning colours. This is a piece of batik fabric and it had fish in it, so cut the fish out. Wonderful, it's the same on the back. Look, this is on the front, goes all the way through. Really nice. I've still got some of this fabric, so I might pull that out. And then I made these little sparkly fish, just stuck some sequins. There was no sewing going on, I just got the glue out. Some little thread pack came from somewhere. Blue Reef Aquarium. Oh, good fish colours. I put arrow, so I think that was stuck there. And again some more silk with some more resist on it and some more salt dropped on it to affect the colours. And some fish underneath. Really lovely layered stuff going on here. Now these are interesting, so more prints going on. We've got some more designs now out of books, so you can get these books where you can just use the designs out of the books. I love to make my own designs, but certainly use these as inspiration to see what can be done with it and as a sort of starting point. And some more prints here. Now I think I did make this print, I remember making it. A stylised fish there, and I've just printed it quite crudely on a bit of, I don't know what this is, muslin again maybe. It's gone quite stiff, but some really interesting ideas, and these designs are absolutely beautiful. So these are by an artist called Ernst Haeckel. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Somebody will correct me if that's not right. He did these incredible drawings. He was a biologist and studied these weird underwater sea creatures is the only way I can describe them. But he did these beautiful pieces of art as well. I've actually got this book here. This is him. This is a wonderful book by Taschen if anybody's interested in these. Quick flick through. There's the man with a couple of skellies, but he did really stunning drawings and studies of all these crazy mad things. Absolutely beautiful. They are real works of art, so well worth looking him up if you like these, because he's just drawn these and they're just incredible. These are in a magazine and I cut them out, so definitely something to be inspired by. This is jellyfish as well. This is another one of his here, and strangely the best one, I don't know why I put it this way around, is on the back. I hope you can see how beautiful these colours are, pinks and greens and yellows. Good, so the light doesn't shine off it too much, but really amazing drawings. There's some more of them here as well. Incredible. And then we are on to seahorses. I love seahorses. Here's the design that I stitched. Look, these are the colours. I don't think it was that big. I hope for my sanity it wasn't that big. Little samples of the threads I put in there. more things stuck on the back, just stick it in anywhere. It's really lovely to explore it and investigate it, and it's not a work of art, it's a working book, it's a working resource. So don't worry too much about what it looks like. Some pictures of seahorses. This guy's really cute. Look at that in a second. So we've got some starfish, again just cut out of fabric and glued onto a backing, but start of something really interesting in embroidery. If you wanted to stitch this machine or hand embroidery or applique or however you wanted to do it, some really beautiful fabrics and textures in that. Some starfish, a little bit more on the silk. I might have to get myself some more silk, I haven't used that for a long time. Octopus, one of those creatures with 2 legs and 8 hands, says Jane Mansfield. And a little machine, free machine embroidered octopus. Cute. Another drawing as well. I would probably do more drawings if I did this now. Some more Ernst Haeckel there. Mermaids, obviously. Mermaids underwater. And some weird, they've got endangered, but they're weird sort of sea slugs and stuff. There's an octopus there and weird stuff going on. And had a little bit some sea urchins here. That's hand stitched. That's just long stitches in black thread on a calico. I won't look too closely because it's probably not very good. And then a bag of stuff that never made it into the book. Let's have a little look in here, see what's in here. A bit more seaweed, some more threads, beautiful colours, lionfish. Saw some lionfish in an aquarium recently, absolutely beautiful to watch. They're just so strange. The markings are incredible and they just sort of waft about and everything moves. It's hard to see what shape they are and what patterns they've got. I think that might be some fish scales. Drawings of fish and coral. Oh, really cute little drawing of some hammerhead sharks. My writing is tiny. Slightly darker shade than the background, cut out silhouette and applique on or satin stitched directly onto materials. Thinking about how I might be able to do something with these ideas, obviously never did. Ladies collecting starfish, probably not very politically correct anymore to do that. Some fish. Here's that one that we did earlier. Made the pattern on the silk. So all of these are obviously going to go in and they never got stuck in. Shipwreck, plane wreck, in fact. So lots of images and another bit of seaweed. So I think that's the last page. Yeah, we looked under there. It is the last page. So just a little flick through. It's actually really interesting for me to see it again, and it's very old now. 20 years old, and you know, come a long way since then, but it's really interesting to look back at this. I've had all these ideas and I feel like I've maybe gone a bit stilted. So it would be really fun to take this and see what I can do with it. So having said that, I have got a couple of pieces that I want to show you, so I'm going to move this book out the way and we'll have a look at those. So this is the first piece that I want to show you. Now this has appeared on my social media accounts and I think probably a couple of videos before, but I'm really pleased with it. I want to show you again, and you can see where these colours have come back into. Obviously it's stuck in my mind. I didn't directly do this from the book, but it's stuck in my mind, and this was a project about using up these Swarovski crystals. How nice they, and you just had to get the Swarovski crystals in something, and I just thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if they all washed up and you just found these crystals lying around. So I made a beach. This is the sea, and this is a sort of white foamy bit. This is the beach up here, and it comes in and it starts to foam when it hits the sand and makes this sort of white pattern on it, and this is deeper here, so it's darker, and these beautiful jewels have washed up on the beach, and you can go and collect them in Sarah's fantasy world. And so I painted the background. This is just calico fabric. I've painted it with watercolour, so if you were to wash it, this paint would come out, but you could use a fabric paint. And I've put some, and I don't know if this is bubble wrap or if this is cling film, something on it to make that texture. Again, not quite sure how I've done that. And then I've also painted a bit of silver on it as well. Some silver paint there. With a paintbrush probably, or a sponge. Tiny little bits of gold as well. And then I've stitched onto it. So I've stitched the jewels on. Here I've stitched some seed beads on. I've got some sequins on there. So it looks like I put the gold on after because it's gone over the sequins, which is interesting. So some sequins and some more beads here, just to make that sort of textured edge. I was really pleased with that one, and I've never finished it. It's just folded under, and I really should finish that in some way. I think I probably have to mount it onto a piece of board, because I think I really love that piece. It comes out a lot and I really think I should finish that, so I will get that done. Right, I promised you I would show you this image from my silk shading book, Sarah's copy, hands off. So this was the piece that I stitched especially for the cover. In hindsight it was a bit too small, you needed something a bit bolder and a bit brighter because it was only a small book cover, but you live and learn about these things. But again, painted background, those beautiful turquoise colours, so darker. Do you remember we looked at that background painting when it was dark around the edge and light in the middle? So darker around the edges, and as you go up it gets lighter. And then just this light bit right around the fish here, which just makes the fish come forward a bit, just throws the fish forward. And I've done some light stitching around to make some circles, some sort of patterns of the water, things dropping into the water, some sequins because you can't make things without putting sparkly stuff on. And I've painted this big coral reef, the background, and then done some stitching on top. This is some felt with some stitching in it. This is all silk shading, this and this, and the fish. We'll look at him a little bit closer in a second. I've got some plants here, and I've got some beads for some kind of rocky, corally, sea type texture. There's some French knots in here. There's a bit of texture in there as well. So let's zoom in and have a little look at the fishy. So he is all silk shaded, and actually when I look at this again, I haven't looked at this for a long time, really quite pleased with him. You can see that all stitched in cotton, stranded cotton, one strand of stranded cotton, lots of colours in there. There's blues and purples and red and yellow, orange and pink. Really beautiful colours in these amazing bright fish, and because I put that white background around him, he really pops out, really makes him stand out. So I hope you enjoyed that little delve into my sea themed book. I will put some images of the fish from the book cover on my community page, so you can go and check that out and have a good look at those ones there. I'll also put information on the book that I mentioned in the description below this video if you're interested to see that. And there are more of these project books. I've got a couple more, so if you're interested to see these, then let me know in the comments below. This one was from my art classes and my apprenticeship. It's about Hampton Court, so you might be interested to have a look around that one too. So just drop me a message and say if you are, and I can do another one based on this. And I want to leave you with some images from the sea theme book so you can have a good look at those, a close-up look and see that in detail. But I didn't just want to give you some snapshots of it, so I've created a little sea themed experience for you. So I do hope you stick around and watch that and enjoy that, and I will see you next time.